It's easy to look at someone's success and talk about how lucky they are. But too many times, the amount of work required to create that so-called luck is overlooked. Kenzie Fitzpatrick has taken it upon herself to create opportunities in the firearms industry. We find out exactly how that was done in this week's episode.
This is the No Excuse to Miss podcast.
Welcome to the No Excuse to Miss podcast. I am your host, Scott Volquartsen, and this week's guest has used her master's in marketing to start a business and her passion for firearms to dive into our industry. Welcome to the show, Kenzie Fitzpatrick. How are you doing?
I am awesome, living the dream.
Well, I'm glad we're finally able to do this. You've been busy, you've been sick, so I appreciate you making time for us.
Thank you for being flexible. So I'm excited to be on here and honored. So thank you for having me.
So there's a bunch of different things I want to get to, but first, can you just give a brief background of, one, how did you get into the firearms industry, or where did your love of firearms come from? And then secondly, what made you decide to go kind of into the marketing path?
Yeah. So I grew up with my dad, my grandpa taking us duck hunting in Louisiana, Texas border. And then grew up shooting more revolvers and stuff with my grandfather, my dad. That's what they're into. But it's weird how for about teenage years, 10 years, I kind of took a break, wasn't interested, had no desire to shoot firearms. And I do not know what made me do this, but maybe it was just sense of concealed carry and getting interested in protecting myself because I was by myself. In college, I Googled Florida State University, where I was going, and pistols. And that could have brought up several things in Tallahassee. But it brought up the Florida State University at the time called Rifle Association. So at the time, there was a female president. I reached out to her and asked her what it was about, how I could get involved. And that was really the catalyst for me going out to the range, shooting with her. And then she's like, you should try out for the pistol team. I'm like, I have no clue what I'm doing. So she had me shoot. I won't say it was a natural, but I was naturally talented in understanding firearms and how to shoot and aim properly. So I made the team. And it spiraled from there on the range where I was getting involved with Steel Challenge and USPSA. I did cowboy action at that range, Talon Range in Tallahassee, and the industry stuff. So when I went into my master's degree, I knew I was going to come out with a business, so much so that 3 weeks after graduating, I formed my LLC. And I went to the range owners and they knew me fully. So I'm like, hey guys, I would love to do your social media. I would love to make the posts, take the pictures. I'm already here 5 times a week. And they said yes. So that opportunity, and I was with them for 7 years. So we just, they have someone internal doing it now, but for 7 years I did their marketing. And I was like, okay, if they can say yes and they're interested and I'm doing a great job, who else do I love that I already work for? And so it kind of took off from there where I worked with brands that I use their products, love their products, and it just spiraled. And now I'm writing, now I'm doing a podcast. None of that was planned, Scott. So where I am at now is crazy to believe.
So a couple questions on that. How, in your opinion, how is the industry change from a marketing standpoint from when you first kind of start doing those social media posts until now?
No joke. I was in the era where we used to be able to pay for advertisements. So we were able to sponsor our posts on Facebook and put money behind those ads, which was so wonderful because they weren't all promoting the sales of firearms, ammunition, or whatever, but it was more of an awareness of the range membership or being able to come to an event. So it was a lot more gun friendly on social media. I never had a post block, something taken down or restricted. Whereas now, I am watching hashtags, links, making sure things don't say sale, even if it's a holster, not even is, the ammunition or firearm stuff. So I've completely seen where we were paid for sure generation, where this industry now is 100% influencers, ambassadors, organic, word of mouth marketing.
And I think that's something that a lot of people don't understand is we can't, if you're in the industry, it becomes second nature that we can't buy a Facebook ad or an Instagram ad. But we are literally we get posts still taken down from 2016, 2017. We'll get a notification from Instagram that says this post has been taken down if you'd like to review it. And we'll have to look at it. We're like, that was 5 years ago.
Yeah. And we're
and then we'll go through and Chad does this more than I do, but try to figure out what was the word that triggered this to be reviewed. And many times we can't even figure out why that particular post has been pulled down.
Yep. I tried to negate one, and it was like, when I wrote, this was prior to the changes that they implemented, and they still didn't like that. So I've been in Facebook jail pretty much every week now for 3 to 6 days at a time.
So from that perspective, what do you think, like, the 2A industry, I'll just group it all as a whole, gets right when it comes to marketing? And where do you think there's a lot of room for improvement? Because for me, having grown up in it, I still think sometimes we are 5 or 10 years behind like mainstream advertising. Part of it is because we can't play by the rules that everybody else gets to play with.
Yep.
And the second part of that is sometimes we are an industry that says, well, this is how we've always done it, so we're just going to keep beating our head against the door and use the same tried methods that nobody else is using outside of what we do.
Yeah. When companies get it right, I think is going with partnering again with those influencers and brand ambassadors that have YouTube channels or have podcasts or have a following on social media, and not just a following, but a actual like real people, loyal following that has engagement and comments. And the companies that are doing it right are the ones that are not just one-way streeting it. They're actually answering questions or doing Q&A. They're resharing posts of the stories from people that have tagged them. I know so many companies that I have tagged before that have never responded, never reposted. It's only their content, their photography, and I can't relate to that. And when I see the companies that share it, like Walther way back in the day shared a video of mine on Facebook and it went viral, and they sent me a shirt and a hat, and I'm like stoked, and it made me as a customer feel so good. And then of course I'm sharing like, Walter shared this video, check it out. And it spiraled to family and friends checking it out and commenting. And they're doing it right, because when people are excited to see that and they know somebody, right, like it goes so well. And then the sad part of marketing too, with companies doing it wrong, I think, is just tailoring content more towards people who are already in the industry or already a firearms user. So I would love to see more education stuff, of education of why they should have this product or what this product does, or just starting from basics for beginners, because that's who they really should be bringing in on board. And that's really hard to do. But that's what I see.
And I think that can be hard to do sometimes, because if you tailor some of the stuff to the brand new shooters, maybe we run the risk of, or at least in our minds, we run the risk of alienating the people that have been around forever. But like we've talked about offline before, the problem with that is this is a very intimidating business for new people to get into. So without that component to it, how do we ever expect to grow outside of, our core audience?
Yeah, absolutely. And that goes to vernacular too. Think about the verbiage we use. I'm still asking what acronyms or words are. I'm like, it's embarrassing sometimes to ask, but we don't know.
Well, and I think you bring up a great point and if you look at some of the comments, sometimes when somebody does ask, you get that one guy that'll absolutely blast them.
Yep.
And I'm like, how is that ever going to welcome them back to what we're trying to do?
Yeah.
They're going to be like, okay, I don't know. And I'm never going to ask again.
Yeah, you were 100% right. Yep.
And you probably see that more than most, because I guess let's kind of segue into this. You come at it from all angles, from the marketing side, from the competitive side. You host a podcast called Reticle Up that you've just relaunched. You are a writer for multiple publications. And then you also are an instructor, correct?
Yes. Yep.
So you're seeing it really in all aspects, from the experts that are on the competitive side to instructing. Is it just new people you instruct, or what type of instruction do you do?
So 2 things. I mean, definitely basic concealed carry classes. I did those in Florida. I do the Tennessee one as well. And then I do private classes mostly when people reach out and they say, I really want to learn how to shoot 2-gun. I really want to learn how to reach out with rifle. And so those are valuable. What I would like to see, and I haven't done it yet, is an intro to competition shooting, which I sort of do with my Gals Day event, because I introduce them to everything. But I don't know what that looks like, because I'm not a professional high level shooter, but I know safety basics and how to shoot, if that makes sense.
Which do you think that almost makes you a better instructor than if you were at I feel like sometimes the people that are competing at the very top of the game forget some of the very basics that got them to that point.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. So I definitely can relate to people who are starting out, and I have never forgotten that. I try to remind even people that that could be the first time that they've learned that concept, that they've been there, and to not make fun of them. It's interesting you ask that, because when I'm at the range and I see someone that I'm dear friends with trying to shoot fast, or watching me and trying to mimic that. And I was like, hey, like, I'm not trying to put you down, but you're at this level. I'm here. I have been you. Be you. Like, it's just you and me at this range. Like, you don't need to impress. You need to go fast. Let's get the fundamentals down. And you're going to be exponentially better than me, because I didn't learn what you're learning until way too far down the line. And so that's where I come at it for that aspect. And same thing with, it's interesting. I taught my friend how to build a rifle. She didn't even know that the takedown pins is how you even separate the lower from the upper. Why would I make fun of her or laugh at that if she's never seen it, owned one, put one together? I mean, starting from zero, right? And we also are so quick to like bash someone for not knowing the correct verbiage or word for something, right? Like roll pin, punch, but then the magazine, the clip stuff, I won't even go into, but that is not important. It really isn't. So it's just something where it's like, this is going to be overwhelming. Do not worry about so much of this. Let's get the basic concept down, and you'll learn from there, because that's how I have learned along the way.
And honestly, for that new person, they're taking in so much information. Mm-hmm. They're probably not going to remember whether it is a roll pin, a spring pin. All they know is this pin that looks about like this is supposed to go somewhere in this vicinity.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think, sometimes I think it's because we like to, or when I say we, I'm saying our community or whatever, our industry, like to pretend like we are so smart and we know everything.
Yeah. Yep.
That we try to showcase that knowledge by getting very technical on the terms.
Yep.
Versus showing them what they need to be successful.
Couldn't have said it better myself, Scott. That sums it up. 100%. Yep.
So, on your instruction side, do you ever see, do you have men or boys, I guess, whichever, that sometimes are reluctant to take instruction because you are a female in the industry?
Egos in our industry are very high. Very, very high. I separate men from women in classes. So if I have couples, I take what I learn, I will teach. And then if you need to go home and do your little couple thing or whatever, or tell your wife or your spouse what to do, fine. But like in my class, we're not going to do that. Because I don't know what you know. I don't know what I know. I don't know everything. I tell people in my class I don't know everything. And I think that's something where nobody starts with, because they don't want to feel embarrassed or uncomfortable or incompetent. But I tell them, like, I learn something every day. This whole industry is overwhelming like that. But yeah, some people in Easterland don't want to.
To me, when you say you don't know, that actually gives you credibility.
I would hope so. I'm like,
because it's okay. She's being honest straight from the front with us.
Yeah. And I learned the crane, what a crane was of the revolver. Actually, I never knew that was the word that is the hinge that moves the cylinder in and out. Hey, learn something new from a student. And I'm open to that. Like, that's awesome.
And I think we even see this, not to go off on a tangent here, but even like when we look at like the various 2A groups that are out there, mm-hmm. we are so quick to attack our own.
Yeah.
You're either with this group or for this group. You can't be for both, because that might help us too much. I don't know.
Yeah. You're right.
And so a couple weeks ago on Instagram, I was telling you before we started recording that I did a Q&A for a different podcast that we did. And one of the questions that came up, and I'm not sure why I got it, but that's for a different time. It was, what's it like to be a female in the industry? And I don't know if they were asking me like how I view or how, what I think of females in the industry, but I figured, I knew you were coming on. It'd be a great time to dive into that with you.
Okay.
So I'd like your thoughts on it, both from the marketing side, like with your marketing hat on, and then as somebody in it on the competitive side.
Sure. Competitive, you're 100% a unicorn on that end. And there's no lack of support for sure on having women in the sports. Like for 90% of our shooting community, doesn't matter where they are, people are not stopping and be like, oh, we have a female today. We've got to be different, or we've got to like treat her like she knows nothing. That's the cool part is doesn't matter what sport it is. Unless you ask for help, they're not going to give you like mansplain advice, which is really nice. But they're also willing to help you just like any other competitor, and they're not going to treat you different. And I love that about our community. There are some, though, I will tell you this, where I've been to an event. I understand that probably more females that come up to shooting range events don't know enough about firearms or don't know as much as the males because, you know, males are very dominant in this sport. So I went to an event. I went up to the firing line and, you know, the guys were shooting. They had nobody telling them what to do or how to function the gun, whatever. So I walk up and the guy took the time to tell me how the safety works and how to pull a trigger and how I might want to just shoot one round and this how the optic works. And I was just kind of like hurting inside because I was like, because I think I'm a female, that's where that came from. So as soon as I put the mag in, drop the bolt, and I'm shooting offhand rifle 50 yards away on a nipstick, 100 yards away, and going back and forth and double tapping. And I was like, this is fun. And I'm done. And the guy was like, kind of jaw dropped. And my buddy walked up and he was like, you're so good. And then my buddy's like, she shoots with us, dude. Like you treated her like a 12-year-old and you probably should have asked like, what's your experience? And not to say my experience would tell me that I know everything about them, but I've been around them. So that was always interesting going to events in the gun stores, Scott. And I wish this was different. I would love to support gun stores. I have a local FFL and I go to his and buy everything, but I will never step foot in a gun store if I don't have to and never talk to anyone there because I've been condescended to. My girlfriend and I at the time, like we were talking about what gun I wanted to buy because I only had the budget for one. And I was like, well, I really want to teach with this revolver. It's double action so I can show them both. But I really want this Walther because I just found a Gen 1 and I really want it. Out of nowhere, guy comes up to tell me, my old lady doesn't really like her revolvers. You should go with this gun right there. And I'm like, well, sir, do you know why I'm buying this gun or why I'm interested in this gun? Well, no. And when I tell him, he was like, oh, that makes sense. I was like, yeah, I can make my own decisions. And if I had a question, I will ask you. He wasn't even an employee, come to find out. So that's lovely. And that's frustrating, right? It's like we're a target almost for, I don't know, needing to have a handhold process. Yes. As
you're saying that, it makes me think we see that even internally in our office where somebody will call and they may have a question and we have both men and women that are answering our phones and they're like, I need to talk to a guy.
What?
Seriously? In 2022, they'll say, I just need to talk to a guy.
Oh my gosh.
And it's not, there's no context around it or anything.
The voice.
Yeah, it's the voice that we always joked when we were younger that, and my mom would still answer the phone a lot, that she almost needed one of those voice boxes or something to make her sound like a guy. Because at the time she knew much more than a lot of the people calling in.
Yeah. But
it would be, I just need to talk to a guy. And, I get that was a little bit different time 20, 30 years ago, but we still see that today.
Oh, yeah.
And it's so bad that a guy will get on the phone and give them the exact same information that was just given to them. And they're like, oh, that makes sense.
They listen to it more.
Yes. So I can definitely relate to what you're talking about going into the gun stores and having to go through that.
Frustrating. Real quick too, I'll tell this story. And we'll talk about, I know we're going to talk about a little bit, is I was on a show coming out this fall, which I'm excited about. And I had another female competitor on my episode, which I knew through the gun industry, there's so few of us, but I was super stoked to have her and I together. And I knew that there was one other going to be on another episode. After it's done, it's a rifle building contest. The guest judge was like, I wouldn't even know that females would know how to build guns, which is a compliment and an insult. And at the same time, I get it. But I'm like, why would I be here in the studio in this room if I didn't know how? But also, like, how do you respond to that? Yeah, I know more than most. I was the most calm, most like relaxed, knew how to use the tools. I was done early. Yeah. But I don't act like I know everything. It was frustrating to hear that.
It's crazy to hear that.
Yeah.
And it's, at some point I would like to see us as a 2A community get past that point. I realize we're a long ways from that, but
yeah,
it doesn't do any of us any good when that happens.
No.
So from the marketing side, what do you see as like, because we hear terms thrown around all the time, gun bunny, and, people think that women have it much easier than men trying to gain sponsorship or whatever. You're probably much more aware of this than I am, but what do you see like when you put your marketing hat on from that regard?
Yeah. So I guess I'm going to share it on this podcast. I am very frustrated with the gun bunny side of things because we know 90% of that is not because they're interested in firearms or interested in the photos or the videos or whatever that complex may be. But like you said, it's so easy for females to get sponsorships because our industry does that. It is not the majority of the companies, but the companies that are going out there chasing the gun bunnies with the huge following or chasing the ones like that, they're ruining it for the rest of our industry. So until we stop doing sex sells and having these clothing outfits and representing women that way, our industry as a whole is not going to change. Yes, that's frustrating. My sponsors did not come from any of that. It's relationships for me. Again, all of my sponsors, I've used their product, love their product. I'll still pay for their product. I don't have a problem with that. What has taken me so long is it took me 2 years to build credibility to my name. So I have an armor certificate. I have a published writing that I have to put a portfolio up there. I have had to talk about my master's degree more in the last year than I have ever because I don't even talk about it or mention it. And they're like, oh, that adds credibility. That's what does it, not what I've written, produced, shown you. Like, okay, that's frustrating. So when I put my marketing hat on that way, I'm very frustrated. And then on the flip side for where we kind of fail as an industry, and I was talking about this the other day to somebody at a company. I was like, none of your graphics and imagery has any minorities represented, whether male, female, different age groups. And if we're looking at the statistics of women are the largest firearm demographic buying guns right now, why are we not talking to them, interviewing them, using their photos, having their stories shared of why they're buying those guns, like moms or whatever that looks like? I just see male after male after male after male, and that doesn't stick out to me as anything new.
Do you think sometimes it's because they don't know how to necessarily like walk that line between using all men? It's either all men or it's the gun bunny side. They don't know how to kind of walk that middle line of how can we portray females in the industry in the right light?
Yeah, I don't think we have any, well, I'll speak for them. I think most companies are not putting that at the forefront of their mind, is that they should be, at 2022, thinking about how to represent what our gun population looks like, because it's changed over the years. So there aren't people, I think, being intentional about being inclusive or representative or bringing, but again, it's hard bringing people in like me or other females that could be that representation. But there are some out there, and I don't know why we're not using them.
Do you think it's far too often that people just look at like number of followers versus everything behind?
Here we go.
And that's not to say, I know there are some people with large followings that they enjoy shooting, they enjoy going to the range, they have fun.
Yeah.
But there's also some people who have large followings that really aren't immersed in our business and, just used for that large following.
Yes, 100%. I have had to explain, and it's working recently to a couple of companies, that at the end of the day, the micro influencer with the smaller following that's selling more can prove more even and give you better engagement, and people to that are interested are going to be the better people than the followers. I say, stop looking at the number. Actually, don't even go to their profile. Let me do that for you, and I will tell you who you should work with, because I have a pulse on the industry. I'm shooting every single type of competition, but I'm not just in the competition world. I understand the average Joes. I talk to the people that are coming into the industry that know nothing. So I tell them, like, the people that are, it's wild for me, under 2,500 followers, I've sold pistols, gun bags, ammo, like you name it. And 2,500 followers, like that's nothing compared to our industry. So I just get so sick of seeing the number. And I'm like, the click probably, and like the checkout rate is probably 0.0001%, right? Where mine is 50% sometimes. So frustrating. For
Well,
sure.
I think people forget that, just because somebody only has 2 or 3, 4,000 followers on Instagram, like you said, you are constantly at the matches. You are talking to people that are shooting. You're doing instruction for people. So you're working with people and they're going to look to you for advice on what to buy.
Yeah.
It's a much bigger picture than just how many followers in one particular platform do they have.
Yeah. And I swear every day I get hit up from somebody, whether it's from high school, an acquaintance I met along the way, a family member, on what to buy, what to look for, and why. And I don't just give them like my companies I'm sponsored by, right? And I disclose that. That's another thing a lot of them don't do, is they don't disclose I'm sponsored by, so this could be biased, right? But it's fascinating how many people come to you. So if you think about finding those micro influencers with people that are going to know what they do for a living or what they enjoy, those people around them are always going to come to that one source, because there's 1 in a million of us probably out there, right? So, yeah.
So you said something, you like it to be relationship based.
100%. Yes.
So how do you recommend, like, whether female or males, it doesn't matter, if somebody's trying to build a relationship with a company, what's your advice to them on the best way to do that?
Yeah. I mean, I would love to see the starting point of knowing something about their product and owning their product or whatever it looks like, right? So they already have a knowledge for it. So if they're wanting to build a relationship, they do need to at some point go and meet them in person if they can, connect with them, whether it's phone or video. It's not these emails or DMs on Instagram are okay. But I see that because I am running marketing for businesses, where it's amazing how many people think that they're entitled to something from a company because they have bought 1 or 2 items, or they're entitled to a response because, they love their stuff. Guys, they get millions and billions and trillions of those kind of things out there. But, I want to care about the people behind it, and why would you care? So when the relationship is about like a two-way street, or just being friends and then cool business happens later on the road, that's awesome. I mean, a lot of my business came years, I'm not exaggerating, years later, because they met me, I did something, or we did something, or whatever, and they know what I do. I never tried to pitch them or sell them on anything. And when they were ready, they came back and found me, and I was like, yeah, absolutely, right? That's been really cool. So everything in our industry, and I've told people, that is relationship based, whether it's jobs or connecting. I mean, that's what I see. Yeah.
Well, and I know even like for me personally with our shooting team, we always get asked, how do I try out, or how do I qualify for your shooting team? And I'm like, nobody's ever come to us that we signed or that we start sponsoring. We have reached out to everybody that we wanted to sponsor.
Awesome.
From like exactly what you just said, watching them on the range. And the one thing that I'll always look for is if they have a gun malfunction or a bad stage or whatever it might be, how do they react then? Because it's pretty easy to be in a pretty good mood if everything's going your way, you're winning, your times are good.
Yeah. But,
how are you going to represent the company because obviously adversity is going to hit you at some point on the range.
Yeah. Yep.
So that's, at least from our standpoint, that's how we've always done it, is we go actively seeking for people to be on our team, not them coming to us and saying, hey, can I have a sponsorship?
Right. And I think the majority of mine for sure sought me out, but I have done it differently, where I wanted kind of like, I knew the relationship, I knew the person, I love their brand, but I knew that it was very hard to get that like sponsorship or that relationship, where I built I could probably send it to you, a shooting resume, a shooting log of all of the matches I've ever been to, where I placed, or if I RO'd, the events I've gone to, the podcast stuff I've got, the teaching classes. I mean, it's overwhelming, right? But it was cool where I'm giving all of this to a company. We're like, oh, like this is like someone who's serious about business or impact or growth. And it's not just someone, hey, can I get some free stuff? It's like she put thought, energy, and effort into it to ask for that. And I'm talking about a major ammunition company I'm sponsored by, which again, that's rare. That's unicorn. Yeah. But he was really impressed by that. And that was exciting to see.
Well, I think that shows you get the entire landscape of the business, not just send me some free stuff and I'll put a logo on my jersey.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
So switching gears, I want to get into a couple different things with like mindset, discipline, dreaming, things that we've talked about. But where did your work ethic come from? Because if somebody follows you on social media, you're in an airport, it seems like every other day. You have all these different things that you're doing, and it's like nonstop. You know, like you said, it took 2 years of different things to, accomplish certain things. But so where did that come from? Was that something you learned or possibly through your parents?
Yeah, 100% I say it a lot now, I realize, my parents. So I work for a nonprofit as well as contractor and entrepreneurship. And I share this all the time. I am so lucky that my parents are still together too, but they were a team growing up. They both had businesses that they had started. And I saw that firsthand of they started it, they're free. They work, 5, 12-hour days so they can have a great weekend or take off or build something for the future. So, and my aunt, my uncle, catering business, owning restaurants, it doesn't matter what it was. I saw it without realizing what I was seeing or that I was learning the work ethic. And my parents did a great job growing up. You learn to cook, you learn to clean, you learn to be self-sufficient, and you help out. And like, I remember I was telling someone this, my mom owns a flower shop. First couple of years, my brother and I were sleeping on the floor. We're eating Taco Bell. We're delivering flowers. Like that is what you do as a family. And there's no questioning it. And I was grateful for that. Super type A, super like teacher's pet. Like I loved school. And I always knew from an early age, which I'm thankful for, of like some bucket list items I wanted to accomplish when I was 16. So this is prior to firearms. Like I knew I wanted a master's degree. I knew I wanted to go to this so funny US Open of surfing event, and I was going to make it. And I went that one summer, and I made a list of like, this is what I'm going to do. And how do I figure out how to get there?
That's awesome. Yeah. I'm going to disagree. I can't say I love school, so.
I was such a nerd. I was a mathlete. Oh my God, I was an overachiever.
Like when you knew you were going to get a master's, did you know what it was in, or you just knew that at some point you'd have a master's?
Yeah, I didn't know what it would be in at that point. I started out in engineering. I love math, science, all that stuff, right? And then I switched gears into IT, and like marketing kind of fell in my lap, and I had a scholarship for sports marketing. So I got to take some classes for free. And again, at that time I was into like surfing, but also like football and basketball and baseball. I've had I feel like 3 different lives, and I'm only 30 years old, but yeah.
So
I wanted a master's.
When you set a goal for yourself, do you have like a plan that you follow, or like a format? Like, okay, like with your surfing, this is where I want to end up. To get there, I got to reverse engineer it and do this, this, and this.
Yeah, it's never a linear path where I say, okay, here's the goal, and I'm going to go backwards and say, these are things I need to accomplish. 90% of the time, I see my goal and I have no clue how to get there, but I have an idea of what I'm going to put in the work to get there. So like for surfing, I took a class. I went out on holidays. I went out before school. This is really bad one time. Before school, I only had a wetsuit on because it was freezing cold. I forgot to change the clothes, so I went to school in my wetsuit. Like, but my grades, I told my dad, my grades had to be here. I had to take a class. I had to go in the morning before school and make it work and keep grades up in order to achieve X, Y, Z. And that was really cool. Or I had to make money. I had to pay for my flight. I had to pay for my food. Like I had to pay to get to California, and I did. And it was awesome.
So I take it you went through high school without really too much fear of what people thought of you, maybe?
I don't think that's true.
Okay, no. I was just going to say, like, to show up in school in a wetsuit.
Oh, that was for sure probably like where I didn't care anymore, and I was happy that I surfed everything. Yeah. But no, I grew up in a rough, Catholic school, I will say, small town Catholic school, very wealthy families. And we did not come from money. Like my grandparents paid for my brother and I to go to these schools. So that was really intimidating. And I have always been very independent and outspoken. And I'm never a peer pressure kind of person. So I always did feel actually on the outside and feel judged and not sure of if I should conform to peer pressure or just keep doing me. It's hard.
But fast forward to where you're at now, that probably has helped you tremendously being a woman in the firearms business. Being able to stay true to yourself. Yes.
Now I'm super confident in myself. I still get, I guess, I care what people think sometimes, but not always. And I'm like, you know what?
I think we all do it to some degree, don't? I mean, even as much as it's become popular online to say you don't care what I mean, I think we all care at some point what people, especially people we respect, what they think of us.
Yeah. Yeah. Or like we know that we failed or we messed up and it's like, oh, and they're probably loving that, right? They're excited about that, but we have to work harder to keep going.
Yes.
Yeah.
And something else you talked about is that you always dream big.
Yes.
So where do you see, like, where do you want to be in like 5 and 10 years, or where do you see yourself at?
So my dream would be like Lena Michalik, but for Kenzie Fitzpatrick. How do I get there? So my dream would be that it's like a household name that people have seen my work versus like I probably won't be the best shooter. Like Lena's known for her awesome shooting and her family too, but I want to be known for, oh my gosh, Kenzie's that girl that podcast, shooting, sponsored, writing, like she did the business. She is in the business. Like she deserves everything that a guy could do in the business, right? Like SHOT Show for me, like I wanted to go to SHOT Show very early on. I never went with that shooting range. I actually dated someone that worked at another range at a store, a firearms store. And I thought I would go with him one year. I never went for that. Like I ended up earning it. And like for this last year when I had a badge that had reticle up and Kenzie Fitzpatrick on it, and I'm like, I made it. That was huge. That's a huge dream to go to SHOT Show. So that's where I want to be in 5-10 years is just that huge recognized, I guess, name, but for doing it the right way and the non-gun bunny way.
Do you think sometimes Lena gets discredited or people don't give her enough credit for what she's done because they just assume that she's Jerry's daughter and all this has been given to her?
Yes, she is on the range daily. You do not get good by not practicing or putting in fundamentals work or dry firing. And like she has lost before and it's driven her to come back and do even more. She's similar to me in that she's living out of her truck. She's driving across the country. She is giving back and teaching and all of that. So there is a discreditation. I will say it's probably a little bit easier. It's similar to any kid that is born to like an owner of a firearms industry company or born into media. I've seen like third generation, in this industry. It's like, you're not lucky, but you do have a foot in that I was envious of, right? Like I will never have that. That's awesome. But
she probably gets the opportunity to get her, at least be heard by different companies.
Yeah. Yep.
But then like you said, the other side of it is she has put in the work and continues to put the work in to get where she's at.
Yeah, I don't talk about myself a lot or enough, or I don't even bring up podcasts, but even in the last month or two with everything that's been like catalyst for change for me is people are like, well, I met you. And then later down, I didn't know who you were. I'm like, who am I? Like, I'm just a redneck from Florida that likes shooting. But they're like, oh, well, you're legit. I was like, well, maybe like a little bit. I kind of love doing this, but there is so many times where people are shocked because I don't have that name recognition yet, for sure.
So touching on that, where do you think, because, in order to gain sponsorship and in order to keep moving forward, you have to be able to self-promote. Mm-hmm. Where do you think that line is between self-promotion and going too far, like just being arrogant or cocky? How do you walk that line there?
Yeah, the self-promotion, I think for people that I see doing it correctly are the ones that are trying to do something within the industry that's impactful, whether that is teaching and training somebody new, whether that is being a spokesperson, or whether that is like representing the whole industry in a different way. The people that are just self-promotion because they want a following, they want numbers, they're not doing this for any other reason other than to be famous or be known, right? So like I think about like the Williams sisters. I know Justine's working really hard putting out content and going to do opportunities because she wants to have a training business when she's legally able to. I think it's 18 and up for insurance or whatever. Or all of that giving back stuff is huge. Does that make sense? It's like self-promotion is more of going nowhere. And okay.
Yeah. And you bring up a great point is you can tell some people are in this, because they think they can get a quick sponsorship or whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. And then you can definitely tell the difference from the ones that they want this to be, or at least at the time, their career. Obviously people change, it may change, but.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, who doesn't love getting free stuff too? I mean, that's awesome. But it's not stuff like I've declined before. It's like, I'm probably never going to recommend that. I'm probably not going to wear that. That's probably not really my lane. Appreciate it. But I would love to have a partnership where it's both ways. And that's really important to me to love it or like it, or even disclose. I need to know it first or use it first before I recommend it or post about it.
which I think is huge because too many times, yes, we see people just post and, oh, I love this because it was sent to them free.
Yeah, and it's just a picture of the product or a picture of like the box of stuff. And I'm like, what did you do with it? You're just posting a post. Like, ugh, I don't know. I cringe.
I'll never forget. We had we sent somebody who does a lot of YouTube videos something, and they called. They're like, I absolutely love it, but in the video, I say this particular part of it I don't like. And I'm like, your first instinct is, oh no. But then if you think about it, I'm like, no, that's good because that comes across as real. Mm-hmm. And for us as the manufacturer, if we can set aside that first defensive reaction, we can look at it objectively and say, well, maybe they have a point. They shoot a lot of different guns. They spend a lot of time on the range. And that's the one thing that we always try to do with our shooters or with our ambassadors is give us feedback, good or bad.
Yes. Yes.
It's
authentic.
It's like anything. If everybody just tells you that you're doing great, that's a problem.
You're not going to grow. And I mean, ask strangers. Those are probably the best people to ask to with any of that. I mean, and that's the same with all of the companies, again, that I run with. They want me to run the gear that I want to run or that works for me. So I love double star rifles. The majority of what I run is like double star rifle, but I change the trigger because I want this trigger, or the stock by Luth AR because as a cheek riser, that's really what I want to run. They're not upset about that. They want me to be successful. And the bulk of it's their stuff. I mean, I see that with like Canik and Nils too. Like he almost runs a completely stock gun. He loves it, but there are some things that he changes to help. And that's okay.
And I think like from our standpoint, that's what we want because we want them to perform their best on the range.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know, to me, it's selfish to be like, no, you have to shoot, this, I don't care how you perform. You need to shoot this because that's what we want to promote.
Right. Exactly. And that's cool. That's really cool, Scott. A lot of companies don't do that. So I find that's very valuable.
So before we kind of wrap up here, where can people follow you? Like I said, you have so many different things going on. So before we get into that, I have one more question. What part of the industry do you like best? Do you like the marketing side, the competitor side, the instructional side?
I love the writing side only because I'm either like reviewing a product or a firearm or whatever. And my job is to write about something I love, to be passionate about it, to go take photos with it, to go to a range. Like, what a horrible job and life and day. And then it lives on the internet where like people can see that forever. And my name's on there. That's cool. That's really cool.
That's awesome. And that's the one thing we haven't touched on. We can go there is just how passionate you are about this industry, because what you do with traveling and all the different things you can't do unless you are very passionate about what you're doing.
Yeah. I mean, it costs time, money, and effort. And for a lot of us, time is more important than our money, right? So like if we go back to like the 2 years I put in, those 2 years I looked at, I volunteered for every single major match you could name. So like whether it was 3-gun, multi-gun, USPSA matches, nationals, 2 weeks in hotels at a time, like that's not fun. But I did it. And showing up, this is the hardest thing, showing up and starting. That's what I tell people to do. If you're not showing up to SHOT Show, to the Gundies, to the Gathering, to whatever it is, like you're not going to meet those people. You're not going to make those relationships. They can be cultivated online to an extent, but not as much. So my year is starting like the podcast I talked. You know what? I was like, I'm going to do it. I was hoping for a co-host. That never happened, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to launch it and I'm going to do it. And if I fail, that's okay. But guess what? 99% of people didn't start. I started. That's cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And the yes attitude. I mean, there are tons of sacrifices. Like I don't make a lot of family things, or I'm not available for a lot of things on the spontaneous like side. But this year has been yes. So like I'm going to several events this fall saying yes to that TV show I knew zero about. They kind of laughed at that. I was like, yeah, I just said yes. And they were surprised at that. So
when will that come out, or when will you be able to start promoting that?
Oh, I mean, we can chat about it. It's October. Yeah, October. So I am episode 3. It's Gun Talk Media's Build Box First season, there's 6 episodes, and I'm on number 3.
And for those that don't know, where can they watch it at?
Yeah. So Gun Talk Media, they are going to be on the Outdoors channel, but they are also going to publish it on YouTube and Facebook and all of that. So at some point, it'll be online as well. They're like 22-minute episodes. They're not very long.
That's, and you brought up a great point about you put yourself out there at the SHOT Show, the Gundy, all these different events. That's something that, like we've talked about, I think where our industry even needs to move to more to is live events where the manufacturers are interacting with the end consumers.
Yeah. Yeah.
We see it in a lot of other, segments of the market, but I feel like we can do a much better job with that because, I always laugh. SHOT Show, when you're on our side of it, is such a big thing that you kind of get all involved, all encompassed. You go all in on it. But then you start talking to people who are avid shooters and they're like, I have no idea what SHOT Show is. You're like, How do I go? And then you're like, oh, you can't go.
Yeah. Yep. Sorry.
And it wasn't until we started promoting more of what we're doing at SHOT that we actually got a little bit of pushback from people that said, well, we can't go. Tell us where we can go see your products.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which was an eye opener for us. And now it's why we are trying to do more events, more demos, just to get our products in hands of shooters. And on top of that, to, like you talked about, build the relationships with people, which is always interesting at an event because it's hard to do on the range because everybody has ear pro on. Yes. So I give credit to those events that they have their range time and then they have like a social hour or whatever you want to call it later. And you mentioned one a couple weeks ago when we spoke. It's called The Gathering. Where's that one held?
Clinton House. They are going to be on, I think, year 3 next year. I could be wrong. 3 or 4. Yep. South Carolina. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. And it's just interesting. It's great to see like how involved you get, how much you volunteer. So what's going to happen is a few years from now, you're going to be where you want to be and everybody's going to think you're an overnight success.
Yeah. The word lucky. You're so lucky. Oh, well, you know, your job lets you do that. Nobody gave me my job. Like, it's not me that I built that. And there was so much risk involved, Scott. Like, I mean, I've lived on a friend's couch for a couple of weeks because I didn't have a place to live. I've moved. That move was in the middle of COVID, but I decided to do it and it was not easy. So I will say that I will get very frustrated. It's okay when someone's like, you're so lucky. Well, you get to do that. Well, I put in the work to get there and I'm not lucky. It's opportunity. Sure.
I chose to do that.
Yes. And again, like they're different lifestyles, but like you chose to get married, have kids, do this job, be an employee. You need this comfort, because my life is not comfortable where it's like health insurance goes up, or I don't know if I can get this, right? Like, or time off. What is that? I can't afford to be sick, and I'm sick occasionally, but I work from bed.
So how scared were you with like COVID hit and all of a sudden all these events and everything started shutting down, with knowing so much of what you do comes from all that?
So that 2 years I put in, 2020 go to SHOT Show. That was the first SHOT Show I'd gone to. I was so excited. I was telling someone like, I'm making it. This is it. This is the year. I'm going to go shoot these matches. I'm going to go to these events. I'm going to do these marketing, whatever, for companies. When COVID hit, and this is the story for most people, but when COVID hit, I wanted to quit. I was thinking about getting a job. I was devastated. I was super depressed. I mean, I need people, I need relationships and connections. And I did not know what my future looked at that point. Like that was the worst thing to ever happen with the momentum, because the momentum's what killed me with COVID, that now has taken 2 more years to do that. So
what was the turning point that you said, I'm going to stick with this?
It was the fall where the matches in that COVID year said, F it, I guess I'll say. And they were like, we're going to have this. If people are complaining about the ammo, they're complaining about COVID, they're playing whatever, that's their choice and that's fine. But the match directors that still had the events are really what helped me like keep going. If the FL said, all right, I'm going to show up. Okay, then I'm going to come. I'm not going to worry about it. And that's still now in 2022 where I get it. Shooters are like, gas is expensive, ammo is expensive. And then people are changing round count for no reason, or sort of for a reason, but for shooters that want to shoot, that were prepared, that are prepared and are willing to pay the prices, we have not slowed down. I've shot more in this crisis mode than I've ever shot in my life. So,
which I think kind of speaks to just who you are, that, you put your head down, you're like, I'm going to do it and figure it out later. Where so many times everybody wants to figure everything out, every scenario.
Yep.
And then once they get it all figured out, they'll do it, but by then it's too late, or that time has come and gone.
Or they're stuck. That was why I moved to Tennessee, is single, no kids, no job holding me down, whatever it looked like. And I have talked to people that are younger than me, 25 years old. They're, living at home. And I'm like, you could be here. You could be training. You could be a sponsored, probably pro athlete, because you're at this level for shooting, and you need to be in those places where Florida, the hot spot for shooting, or Arizona, or where those really good shooters are. Yeah, but I would need a job. I would need to line this up. I would like our connections in this community, small community. You can find a job anywhere right now, but you have to make that leap. You have to. You can't plan it out. I haven't planned out anything that I've had. I don't think any of this is really planned.
Do you ever mentor like young shooters if they ask you?
Oh yeah, if they ask me, and I get even actually 2 days ago on Instagram, someone asked me, what does it take to get in the industry? What do I need to do? And then the younger the ones that are going to be hitting like 18 and how do they make a career out of this? I've offered them like the writing contacts. I have a 16-year-old who came to me. I love her to death. And I've connected with her 2 companies that I write for, because somebody opened the door for me. I'm opening that door for her. But that has to be someone too that is not just talking. They're putting action in. They want it. They're serious, right? And I can see that from their passion or their heart or whatever. I will open that door for anybody. But it's also my name on the line too. So I'm going to put effort in if people are willing to put effort back. But because my time is so valuable, I won't say I'll help anybody. But if you're serious, yeah.
And if you're willing to put the work in, because I would imagine somebody that works as hard as you do is going to have a hard time with somebody that's just expecting to get something for nothing.
A handout, yes. And I have hit brick walls with people complaining, or again, going with you're lucky, or you get to do this. And I tell them how you can do it. You can do it with an 8 to 5. I built my business with an 8 to 5 job. I had a job for 2 years. I did this on the side. I didn't make a lot of money. I was figuring it out. I've had clients come and go. Are you willing to do the risk and put the work in? And if you're going to keep telling me no, or I didn't do it, or I didn't start, I'm going to probably stop investing my time. That's investment for me.
And even coming full circle, you talked about like the Walther video that you did that they ended up resharing. You had no expectations that they were going to reshare that when you did it.
No.
And it's one of those, it's like a life lesson. You got to be willing to, give and hope that at some point somebody pays you back, but it's not guaranteed.
No, it's a nice surprise. Yeah. And I tag as many companies as I can, whether I'm sponsored or not by them, so that they get the visibility. They can reshare that content. The content's everything. That's hard to create. So yeah, that was really fun. I'll tell you this, Scott. It was me running in to grab the Walther pistol, load around, and it was a 50-yard pistol shot offhand. And I hit it on the first try, dumped it. And I'm like, whoa! guys are going through a whole magazine to hit that thing and still didn't. I hit it on the first shot. And I'm like, ooh, it was cool. It was really cool.
That's awesome. No wonder they shared it.
Yeah, that was with their Q5 when it rolled out. So yeah, it was good.
And I think that's something though, that's great advice for like shooters and anybody in our industry is, you don't have to be sponsored by them or have a relationship with them. But if you start tagging them, it helps everybody in the industry, because we are so restricted on the various platforms, but we're kind of forced to play in that platform, because as much as we would love to see one take off, everybody's so ingrained with the Facebooks and the Instagrams of the world. I think we're pretty much stuck there.
Yeah. Yeah. I manage a couple accounts like we've talked about a little bit, and I know who's posting for our company. I know who's tagging us in content and videos and stories. I see it. I'm mentally making a list. And when I get an email, or when the company gets an email and they ask me, hey, should we sponsor this person? Should we give them industry pricing? And I'm like, no to any of that and all of that. Or they're already in, right? They're sponsored or whatever it looks like, and they've done absolutely nothing. Just because you're sponsored doesn't mean that you should keep that or get that or continue on forever. Like, I'm like, they haven't done anything for us, which has to be two-way. It's very frustrating. So I see it. I know it, people. So I get surprised when I see messages and I'm like, what have you done?
Yeah. And you're right. You kind of keep a mental notebook of, and like I said, Chad, who handles most of our social media and all of our marketing, would know this better than I do, but you kind of keep a mental notebook of that person's been tagging us in his stories or his feed ever since he bought that rifle from us.
Yeah.
And he's never asked for anything.
Yep.
At times we'll reach out and say, hey, can we send you, some swag, a t-shirt, whatever.
Yep.
We appreciate it.
Yeah. That's what Walther did. It went a long, long way.
Well, how many years ago was that?
This was 2019. I end up buying the Q5 steel frame after that. I have the PPQ now, the 22. I don't even know what I have. I have everything. I have their James Bond gun. There's a lot. And the PPP.
And how many times have you probably told that story?
A lot. Yeah. It's really cool. Because I screenshot it. I used to screenshot every day the number where it was like 17,000, 50,000. I'm like, oh, it's still going up.
And from their end, they got all that and it didn't cost them anything.
Nope.
All they had to, it doesn't cost any additional to share just for them to share that. So that's such a cool story and kind of like a microcosm of how things can work if you just keep putting the time and effort in.
Yeah. And if those companies will just repost, reshare, that's content for free, guys. For free.
and that's the funny thing. Content is so hard to come by, but yet we're not always great at sharing the content that's available.
Yep.
So where can people find you? Where's the best place to find you with everything you have going on?
I would say at 3Gun Kenzie. So number 3 Gun Kenzie on Instagram. I put in my bio, my link tree to everything else, the podcast, my websites, all of that's there. So I would say go there for everything.
Well, we'll list that on the show notes too, but I've really appreciated this and can't wait to see you on the range at hopefully some point in the near future.
Yes. And I can't wait for you to see the Volquartsen job that Steve Foster has done on the Cerakote work. I can't wait for you to see the beauty.
And shout out to Steve. Luckily, he's feeling better.
He's alive.
Creekside alive.
Alive. Thank goodness.
Yes.
So thank you for
He's another great follow. It's is it just Creekside Custom on Instagram?
Creekside Custom Lasering. It's a long one. Yeah.
If you're into very unique and cool looking different Cerakote patterns, he does a phenomenal job. And he's excellent at giving back to the community. He helps new shooters. He's one of the good guys and he does it right. So shout out to Steve.
Best humor too. He does lasering and he sneaks some fun things into places if you let him.
Yes. Well, thank you again, Kenzie. And thank you to everybody that listens. We appreciate it. And as always, if you ever have any suggestions or comments, hit us up at podcast@volquartsen.com.